Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this APMG webinar introducing our new Agile Change Agent course and certification. It's Mark Constable here. I'll be your host and moderator, and I'm joined by presenter Melanie Franklin. Some of you will be familiar with Melanie as a regular guest presenter for APMG webinars, and Melanie joins us today as the lead architect of the Agile Change Agent course, and will be taking you through the key details, target audience, and learning outcomes. In putting together the course, Melanie's drawn on her experience as a practitioner, trainer and consultant in all things Agile, PPM and change management, a lot of which goes into Melanie's popular Agile Change Management publication, which underpins the course content that we're talking about today. Before I hand things over to Melanie, bear with me while I cover a little housekeeping. So the first point is we are recording the session today, and we'll make that available to everyone that's registered as soon as we got the recording and slides online. Secondly, you have an option to submit questions at any stage. You should see an area on your control panel when you can type questions in. They'll come through to me and we'll try and address as many as we can towards the end. Your feedback is most welcome, so anything positive or negative about the delivery, please send that through to me. You'll have my email address from the reminder emails and the follow-up emails, so that's very gratefully received. And something that isn't on the screen is just a note to look out for a few polls that we've got throughout the session, so it will warn you when those are coming anyway, but be great if you could take part in those. Okay, that's housekeeping, so welcome Melanie, and over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to talking about this. I'm really passionate about this qualification, and I've been running some pilots throughout the summer and it's gone down a storm. So I'll share with you all the stories from that. But the first thing is I'd like to get to know the audience, please, Mark. So these are the poll questions. We've got a couple now and we've got one about halfway through that I'd like to pose. So if you could do the poll questions now, that would be great, Mark.
Okay, so yeah, first one should be on screen now. So this is about your roles. So which of the following applies to you? So do you perform a formal project or change management role? Are you responsible for leading change, or neither of the above? It's a majority of votes in. We got it's currently hovering around 59–60% for a formal project or change role. It's around 30% responsible for leading change and 19–20% neither of the above.
Okay, I think that's taken us quite comfortably to 110%, so brilliant. Okay. And what's the next one?
And the next one is about qualifications, which should be on screen now. So do you have an Agile and or change management qualification? So a few options there for you. Okay, and we're around 33–35% Agile own. Oh no, it's changing a bit. It's equal actually, around 30% saying Agile only or change management only. 7% say both, and around 35–40% say neither.
Okay, all right, okay, I have no idea how much that adds up to, but I don't care. I get the general gist. So thank you very much for that. Okay, well, let's have a little chat about what's going on here. Why on earth did we need another course? Well, to answer this depends, of course, on your learning journey so far and your personal development goals. But here at APMG, we've sought to address two requirements that for those of us at the sharp end of trying to help organisations cope with an adoption of agile ways of working, and also to cope with the high volumes of change that are coming in. There are two sort of groups: those who have studied the theories and methodology, who want a chance to delve deeper into the practical activities of making what they know sort of in theory work in practice. So some of you know that I trained the Agile PM and the Change Management course, and I believe in both of them. I think the content of both is incredibly useful. I'm a big fan of the Agile PM course because I think it's got a fantastically useful life cycle. I use that life cycle all the time myself. I scale it up so that it's applicable for Agile programs as much as for Agile projects. I might rename an awful lot of the documents and a lot of the roles in it, but I stick true to the general ideas behind it, and I find it incredibly useful. I think so. It's got quite a lot of content in there, but although it mentions things around deployment, which is what it calls the sort of the change management, the implementation bit, it doesn't really delve into perhaps how to do it. And although it talks about the importance of business need, business value, and how you have to use that for all your prioritization, your Moscow prioritization, what makes something a must-have? Is it directly relevant to the benefits? So it talks about how important that is, but again, it doesn't really delve into helping you how to define what that business value is. So I'm very well aware of all the great content, but I wanted to make sure that we were filling the gaps. And on the right hand side there, as far as the change management course is concerned, which I of course know so well, we've got the roles, we've got models, but we haven't got any life cycle. And I know all of you that go on this course with me certainly are always crying out for that, yeah, Mel, but what's the step-by-step sort of roadmap? And for me to say, well, it depends on the type of change you're running, isn't a particularly helpful answer. So what Agile Change Agent is trying to do is it's trying to fill that gap between the qualifications that you may already have, whether you come at it from I've got only an Agile qualification or I've got only a change qualification, it doesn't matter. It honours the content that you may already know, and it then builds on it. But we're also recommending that although this course looks like it's a follow-on for those qualifications, it can also equally act as an entry-level qualification. And that's when we turn our attention particularly to another group of people. Those who perhaps are leading change in their own area of the business, they need to get up to speed on both agile and change management pretty quickly because it's become part of their responsibilities. And I think the reality for me, I was in a boardroom all day yesterday talking about the change management ecosystem that this organisation is building. And it's because they're moving towards this perhaps new resource model. You know, we've always had a sort of perspective that we do on the left-hand side there. In the project world, we're doing the delivery, and then we push that delivery across to the business, who can then use the project deliverables and start working in a new way. But we all know that there is so much change going on, and that it's almost unrelenting. It's continuous, it's complex in that one change has a knock-on effect with many other changes. And I think now organisations, I can't give you a straightforward model because they're all doing it slightly differently, but the general gist is that organisations are now sort of saying, do you know what? We probably need to have a sponsor who sponsors both the creation, the project delivery, but also the creation of new ways of working. We ought to have the project manager paired with, whether we call it a change manager or something else, but somebody who coordinates all the activities to make change happen, from that initial awareness and engagement with stakeholders to having a practice and starting to develop new ideas to actually bedding those down into the culture of the organisation. And the project team need guidance from the business on a day-to-day basis, particularly to work in an agile way and to keep prioritising the must-have items. You've got to hear from the voice of your customer. So we've got to have those sort of change champions. And of course, they rely on their colleagues to drive the new ways of working down through the organisation. And that is about building that change agent network. So we know that there is a new resource model that is starting to evolve, which means there's a much bigger audience for our world. And I think I've been very concerned that we don't just create a world where we have project and change management experts, but actually that we democratize it, and so that we can share our understanding in a simplified way, certainly, but with a much wider audience who could benefit from knowing some of the things that we know. And of course, this new resource model is all about the volume of change. We will never be at a point where change is as slow as it is today, even though it already feels overwhelming, because it just keeps speeding up. And I think the experience is common, that everyone is realizing that, you know, in order to lead this volume of change, the business are a vital resource pool. But it's unrealistic to expect them to have to handle all the changes to new ways of working without helping them understand perhaps what agile means, why it's impacting them, and how to make change happen. And this is what this course does. So line managers and staff from those networks of change agents that take part in the change and make it a reality. This is about helping them to see what perhaps those of us who've been doing this a while know, but actually being able to do it in quite a practical, quite an intuitive way. So we really do need to help those people who need to be able to plan a change, work out how to engage and enthuse all those impacted, build trust with those impacted, create an environment that supports trying out new ways of working, making mistakes, having another go until the change becomes the new norm. So they need it to be kept simple, because it's not their day job. I think that's the other thing, is that we are in competition with people's time. They already have a business as usual job, which is taking up a huge proportion of their energies. So they need it to be simple, intuitive, step by step. They need activities that are almost pre-packaged. So this course provides a lot of things like checklists, questionnaires, agendas, templates, all the things that you can use practically to achieve really any type of change. So this course is for those who already know quite a lot but want to look at the practical application of it, and those who don't have the benefit of that background understanding but still have the same common desire, which is, yeah, how do I make change happen, and how do I understand this agile world? How do I nudge towards a complete change by doing little bits of change? So we're bringing the two worlds together, which takes me back to this and answering the question really, well, yeah, but why should I bother getting qualified in this? Well, I think very practically, if you have got a qualification, you've got a qualification in Agile and Change now, because the Agile Change Agent, it's hitting the right buttons really, isn't it? It's hitting those sort of hot topics. So it's already sort of screaming that you have the credibility in two of the probably the biggest subjects dominating leadership today. I'm delivering this webinar having come hot foot from a boardroom briefing that I started at 7:30 this morning, where the directors were all asking about really the content of this course and how they can get their staff to work in this more agile way. So they wanted to understand in simple terms what agile would mean for how they get things done, but also that they wanted to recognise that perhaps they need to manage change not in an accidental way, but in a more professional, more structured way, and something that's in a way that's reusable, because every single change that those sponsors that I spoke to this morning are commissioning, they need to understand that actually we know how to make this happen, that it's not just an idea, that we are going to land this and we're going to realise benefits. So I think there is something about getting qualified in the hottest topics going, but also I've been advising a lot of people who are coming up for job changes towards the end of the year, and I sort of say, well, I'm old, I've been doing this a long time, and it's obvious to me the easiest hurdle for job hunting in terms of the job hunting process is getting in front of people. Once you're in front of the interview, then you can both decide whether you like each other and it's an organisation you'd like to join. So the real hurdle is getting in front of people. And the easiest way to achieve that is to be the most qualified candidate. It's very hard to justify not taking a candidate through to interview if they have more qualifications than everybody else in the pile. So I think just sometimes being quite pragmatic about this and going, actually, qualifications are good. They are helpful in getting rid of a simple hurdle that I could overcome. So there's what you're going to learn, why you're going to learn it. Let's have a look at the what, shall we? So I think this course is based on the Agile Change Management book, and we're covering sort of 4 key areas. We need to look at this sort of roadmap is a word for life cycle. It's a word for plan. You can call it what you like, but it's just that step-by-step guide, if you like. We need to spend some time on the practicalities of discovering the business value, the business need, and then how we use it to prioritize our work. And we need to look at the relationships and the environment which will make any of this possible. So it really is trying to sort of take these ideas and put them into that practical setting. The people I've had on a lot of the pilots are not change management experts, they're not agile experts, but what they are is they are responsible for making change happen in their areas of the business. In one group of people, it's in a utility where they are trying to actually work on the ground for how they're actually laying cables out in the field and how they can sort of maybe make that a more agile process, and how they can get those that are responsible for changing how they lay cables to do it slightly differently and to get involved in actually creating those new ways of working. I've worked with a lot of people in the healthcare sector this summer who are looking at how they change how they deliver healthcare, how they admit patients, how they discharge patients, how they do the rostering for the ER, how they do the organisation of operations for the OR. And they've all been using this course, and they've all started creating their own sort of simplified change plans off the back of the roadmap that's in this course. And they've also been thinking about how they manage themselves and those impacted by change using the relationships and the environment piece. So it's been a really, really good understanding that this works in practice, because they've come back to me to show me what it is they've been creating, which has been absolutely fabulous and really good fun. But it's good to know that it's being used. So I thought I'd take you through these 4 areas so you could see the content for yourselves. First, we want a simple roadmap. We just want to say wave after wave of change. So what we've got here is we've got we divide up, if you like, under each of these iterations. I know those who've done Agile PM might want to call this an increment, but an iteration, a wave of change, if you like, which is how we divide up the time frame. We chunk it up into achievements, if you like. So the outcomes are quite important, that when we've finished doing a bit, we've actually shifted the business. We've got an outcome and an achievement. We've got a new way of working. It might not cover every aspect of every process, but it's actually put an improvement into the way that we do things. So we fix something, or we've exploited a new opportunity. And that's what we're doing with this simple roadmap, is we look at the mechanics of how you take what time you've got and the objective you've got, what it is you're trying to affect, and go, okay, how do I chunk that up into useful, relevant chunks that actually mean something? And for each of those chunks, if you like, we will follow really simply, keep the language simple, getting started, making progress, and realizing benefits. So you can see that benefits management is pretty much wrapped into everything that we do. So we've got a nice simple roadmap. I've put this out here. I said to Mark I'd ask a poll question at this point about whether or not you already have this idea of a simple reusable plan that you use for every type of change. So Mark, over to you on the poll question.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. That's on screen now. So do you have a simple reusable plan for every initiative? It's majority no's at the minute, so over 80%, or just gone under 80% no.
Okay, well, that's an interesting result, because that's pretty much in line with, I've been asking this question all over the world for the last couple of years. The reason I asked this question, and the reason this is such an important part of the course, is the fact that in a world of very high volume change, we need something that everybody can understand. We can no longer be in a situation where those who manage the implementation of change are a very small proportion of experts. We actually need to democratize, to hand the power down to all those who are impacted by change. And we can't go around doing sort of quite complicated planning that nobody else understands how to do, or in fact has the time to do. If you happen to be the manager of a team of people who process insurance claims, and you've got to be a part of putting in a new system that manages claims, automates quite a lot of that process, changes the roles of the people in your team, gets them more time to do more value-added things, you've got an awful lot of design and development work to do in terms of how people are going to work differently. you haven't got necessarily the time to go off and do a really thorough understanding of every aspect of agile and change management and what underpins every theory, every model, so that you can then apply that knowledge. You just want something, you go, this is pretty straightforward. I think we could use this. Doesn't matter what kind of change it is, which is what this has been designed for. It's been designed for any kind of change. It could be IT related, but it could equally be, we've bought a new business and we now need to start incorporating our existing business with this new organization, and how are we going to do that? Because there is some simplicity in here about not just the language, but this idea that actually change happens in waves. We don't get everything right first time, and we don't try to launch everything and go live with everything all at the same time. That's not an agile approach. We pick something that we think would make a real difference and we get that out the door, and then we return and start thinking, well, what could we do next that would then make the most value? So iterations, or increments if you prefer, but waves of change that we need to do. And in order to land each wave, we need a bit of structure behind that. We need to work out what the desired outcome is, what does good look like? And then we need to divide that up in a way that enables people to sort of make sure they haven't forgotten anything. So there are activities where they need to sort of get everybody on board, identify what needs to be done, do a bit of planning. Then there's the making progress, where they need to get a lot of work sort of created and tested, and probably go through the hoops of, several versions until we've perfected it. And then we need to put it into operational use, and we need to make sure that we do other things like housekeeping, good tidying up, take away access to the old ways of working, and make sure everyone's focusing on the new ways, and start measuring whether or not they're making a difference before we get ready to do it all over again with the next iteration. So it's a really simple roadmap that anybody can follow for any kind of change. And the thing that's interesting on the course is, of course, it doesn't take long to explain this. It's about how you use it. So you've got this simple structure. We've got then the time to dig into all the kind of planning techniques that we want to do, to think about how do we break it down into specific outcomes that are all valuable? How do we prioritize the work? How do we make a decision about what do we do first? What do we do next? What happens if we run into problems? So we've got time to deal with the real stuff that happens back in the workplace, the real pushback that we get, the difficulties that we get. So it's all about that practical application. And again, 80% of you don't have something that you can rely on. I think the thing that's problematic there is that, as we know, that there's so much change coming up, and also we've got to think about how we get an integrated roadmap. So something as simple as this, we need to make sure that what we're covering is both, as you can see here, there's a line for project activities, which is the deliverable stuff, the tangible change. So I run a project, I'm creating something that didn't exist before. But on the bottom line, I've got to do all the change activities, which is making people aware of what's going to be different, getting them on board with it, getting them enthusiastic about wanting to make the changes, helping them to design the changes, to maybe create new processes, to start practicing those new processes, rehearsing them until they start to become the new norm. So all of those change management activities have to be partnered with the project activities, and this course brings the two together. It says actually it doesn't matter what the activity is, that they both need to be done. Let's align them together and perhaps work together. And so, as you can see here, a very simple plan is that the first wave of change, a bit like the Agile PM course, if you know it, when we talk about things like feasibility and foundations, is that what we're trying to do is get an approach. We sort out what it is we're doing, how we're going to do it, so that we've got our sort of strategy, if you like, or our change management sort of approach. That's what we need to create. But after that, iterations 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and however many you have, each of those creates an actual change for the business, a change that is capable of creating benefits that are valuable to the business. It can be a short or long wave of change, but it brings together both the project delivery and the transition, the implementation, the change management activities. You can call them deployment if you like, but that's what we're trying to achieve here. And of course, what's interesting is well, why is that so important? Why is Mel making a fuss? It's because, of course, that this way of sort of, if we do delivery then adoption, delivery then adoption, well, that's fine. You know, that's certainly an agile approach, but it would be better, wouldn't it, if I could line the two up? I know that the adoption is always going to take a bit longer than the delivery, but as you can see from the length of these two diagrams, they're all sized exactly the same, these little blocks. But what you can see on the bottom line is that as we've been using this more integrated approach, we are aiming for genuine return on investment, and we're getting it much earlier. That little star at the end of the transition curve is when we really start to realize benefits, because people are working in new ways. And of course, the top line there, we have to wait longer. So by integrating them, pulling these activities together, working together, we're not sort of doing change to people. We haven't got the delivery piece then being sort of thrust upon those who have to work differently, who are then trying to juggle what's involved with that and trying to make that happen alongside their day job, with the pressure that there's another delivery coming and another one and another one. But actually, what we do is we work together and we share ideas, we share resources to make that a reality. So it really is that the core of sort of trying to achieve agile and change is in the heart of this integrated roadmap. So if we don't marry these two together, there's a very good chance that we're going to wait a lot longer for the return on investment, a lot of the desire for using these agile approaches. So there's the shorter return on investment cycle. The other thing I talked about, we are going to be using lots of techniques where we do things like a benefits breakdown structure, which everybody seems to love. It's all it's like a game of hide and seek, where what we're trying to do is we're trying to brainstorm every single possible upside and benefit associated with the changes that we're making. We start to think about looking at the scale of that support, the scale of the level of benefits. We start making sure that we're using questionnaires to make sure that we're bringing the right people involved in that, and we're also asking the right questions, that we're covering business value, not from a sort of narrow view of does this increase revenue or does it increase profit? This morning we were brainstorming a whole load of things from does it engage staff more, which lowers staff sickness, lowers staff stress and staff turnover? Does it deliver what the customers are looking for as early as possible? So is that increasing our reputation? In this particular organisation, they were also talking about their net promoter score and making sure that that was going up. So we made sure, and we've got techniques in this course for trying to look at the widest possible breadth of all the different benefits. And then the whole point is that we've got mechanisms in this course for how you then use that knowledge. What we're looking at here on this diagram is core to the course, because what we're saying is we need benefits driven change, that we start with what it is we are trying to achieve. This morning in the boardroom, I kept talking about the phrase, you know, what does good look like? What is it that you want to be able to do that you couldn't do before? Dream for a moment about how you would like your business to be working, because that's the sort of benefits you're hoping that we will achieve. And then once we have those benefits, then we can start to sort of look at, well, what are the changes we need to make? So it's benefits driven and not requirements driven change. And of course, the most common thing that we all fall into is that we start from a shopping list of I want. But actually, when you scratch the surface, sometimes the things that people want is because they're things that they understand or they're comfortable with, but they might not necessarily be the most valuable or useful to the way the business wants to operate in the future. You won't fall into that trap from this course, because you'll know all about how to use the business value to prioritise the work that you're doing. So it's a really good section. A lot of sort of techniques that you go, I can use this back in the office, that's really good. So a useful piece. And then we talk about relationships and we talk about environment. And it's actually empathy, because what we're trying to do with our agile change model is we can't do change to people. We have to walk in their shoes. We have to try to understand how they're feeling, to put, if you like, the change across in a way that answers their unspoken question. What's in it for me? Why should I care? Why should I take time to do this? So we want to build with others. So there's a lot of personal discovery on this course, a lot in terms of looking at how you come across, from your likes and dislikes, what you prioritize, how that might make others feel. We also do some very practical work on building up your own sort of personal leadership. So we say it's almost like your the level of leadership capability that you have, how you're viewed by others. And there's lots of sort of techniques and games that we play to get you having a look at how you might increase that. And the feedback is that that's really, really helpful, because a lot of us are trying to persuade people that are outside of our direct line of authority, and sometimes a lot more experienced and a lot more senior than us, to work in a new way. And to be able to look at your own stock of sort of leadership credibility and think, I've got ways I can improve on this, I can increase this, is very helpful. And if I look from the bottom up on this diagram, we're also looking at environment. In the course, we tend to use the word environment, local environment, rather than culture, because again, it's just a pragmatic approach. We don't have the opportunity to completely rework the culture of the organisation. But what we can do is we can affect the kind of working environment, working conditions that people have who are working on the change with us. We can affect how we treat people, how we respect them, how we listen to them, how we engage with them. We can affect how we therefore reassure them when they are starting to feel nervous about working in a new way, keep that encouragement going and keep them motivated. So we look at the practicalities of doing that, because I think we can all agree that these are important things, but what you want to walk away from the course with is an idea of how to do it. It's no good just learning that something's important and why it's useful if you can't then do it. And this course is all about having a look at the practicalities of things. So we take a very practical approach, and we look at how we build that trust, build that empathy, perhaps with people who might be resistant to the new ways of working. So we move away from the theory and we move into the practicality, whether you know the theory or not. If you know the theory, that's great, you've got a strong underpinning. If you don't, you're introduced to it at a high level, so that you can understand the context, but then we get into, yeah, but how are you going to actually do this? So hopefully that gives you some idea of the course content, the things that we do. I'm just going to zip back so that we've got that structure in front of us: roadmap, value, the business value, the relationships, and the environment. So sort of there were 4 big chapters in the book, so that's obviously not a surprise that we've got those 4 big areas covered in the course. And then let's talk about how we will learn on this course. I'm not going to go through every single box on here, but you can see, can't you, that the pale orange, is that? I don't know, pale sort of block colour there is the activities, and then what you've got is sort of mandatory and optional sort of sections of what you actually learn on the course. You can see that there's an exam at the end there, but look at the proportion of things you do on the course. So it's all the doing, so that you walk away with an ability to do something that you couldn't do before, rather than just know how to do something in sort of theory and know that it's important. Now you've had a chance to practice, and you've had a chance to practice with people, like-minded people on the course as well. So there's a lot in there on the practicalities of things. And so it's learning by doing, not by listening. And these activities are underpinned by a toolkit of questionnaires and checklists and templates. So there's plenty of opportunity to work with others on the course to sort of further develop the toolkit that you are given, but also to create your own materials. I get lots of people photographing flip charts that they've drawn, developing things together, co-creating new checklists of things that will help us get something done or explain something to somebody else really quickly. So you take away all of that collateral with you. So you've almost got your enhanced toolkit as you walk out the door from the course. And then we have said that there's a qualification at the end there, as you can see in bright orange. So I thought it might be nice to talk about it. If you're familiar with the APMG's qualifications, you'll see that this is very much what they've termed a foundation level qualification in the past. So it's simple, multiple choice questions. What we mean by simple, by the way, it's an exam technique for talking about the fact that what you have is a question and 4 options of which you have to select one, and that's what they mean by simple. You've got 40 minutes. None of my people around the world, and we are talking here about people who are not necessarily native English speakers either, have had any issues with completing the exam on time, nor have they had any issues with passing it. So you would hope, wouldn't you, that I would have a 100% pass rate, and I have. Otherwise, what am I doing with my life? But they've all been sort of straightforward, even the ones that have perhaps struggled with the content and perhaps the language, the English language, have scored 28 out of 50 rather than the 25 that's needed to pass. If you're running a sort of 2-day straightforward course, then what you'll find is that it's the last 40 minutes of the course that you can sit the exam. I think as the chief examiner, I think it's worth sort of trying to talk about what we were trying to do with this qualification. As I said at the beginning of the webinar, it is very valuable to have qualifications. It's great to go on workshop style courses, which this is most definitely, the practical courses. But at the end of the day, it's always helpful to be able to say, yes, and I've got some kind of certificate that actually gives evidence of my ability. So we know that that's useful because it's some kind of sort of tangible record that you can put on your own sort of CV, your LinkedIn profile, that you can quote when you're applying for jobs. And as we've already said, being the most qualified candidate is never a bad thing. But we also knew that we wanted to make sure that this course was all angled towards learning by doing and not by listening. So that was the key thing. So we wanted a straightforward exam. I wanted something that evidences your ability, but without you having to memorize lots of sort of chunks of the book. And I'm really pleased that the question writers that I worked with have really sort of delivered on that promise. Because what we've got is we will highlight key parts of the book, but what you find is that you're highlighting sort of one paragraph at the start of a section of the book, but that's it. And then you'll highlight a paragraph in the next section. But the rest of that section is dedicated to the practical how you do it. So in terms of the volume of things that you're looking up in a textbook is very, very little. So it's not about trying to memorize large chunks of a book. It's actually about your ability and the order in which you do things and how you do things that's absolutely critical. But it's nice to get a qualification at the end that gives that objective record of what it is that you have been learning and that you have reached that sort of criteria that you know your stuff. So again, I've had really positive feedback about the exam because I think one of the subjective criteria is when you're rolling out a new qualification that people feel that they have been treated fairly, that there are no trick questions and that they understand where the content has been sourced from in the book. They understand that there is a textbook that underpins the course, but at the same time that they haven't had to spend sort of 6 hours a night studying for it before the exam. So nice and practical as well. So really, that's it. I know we're scheduled for a whole hour, and I'm certainly not going to talk at you for as long as that. If there's any questions, I will happily answer them. But so far, I can tell you that this course has only just recently launched, and I've never known anything quite so popular. I'm overwhelmed by the number of people that want to go on the courses. I'm grateful, I'm pleased because it validates everything I've been doing this year, but it's gone down a real storm. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. Any questions there, Mark?
Yes, Mel. Yeah, we've got a couple so far, and I think the thing that really stands out for me, and it's really hit home in this session as well, is that practical element over the theory. So yeah, that's
yes, you
really...
like the learning by doing, not by listening, which I worry about sometimes. And this webinar is a good example of it. I've been talking for 45 minutes. I need a cup of tea.
Okay, on to questions. So first one says there's a clear link to the APMG change management course and Agile PM, but is what you learn here compatible with other frameworks? So I just pick one out, Prince2, for example, if someone was using that as their project framework.
Yes, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, it's all about how you plan out an initiative and the activities that you do. We're not setting out to try to rubbish what goes on. And so, for example, although Prince2 is a more waterfall approach and not an agile approach, there are always ideas that we can take from those methodologies. And I think your trainer will be able to sort of link back, and you'll be able to share what you know from something else and go, oh, I could still do that then. Oh, that still fits in with that then. So, I mean, I seem to have every qualification going, all of the Scrum qualifications, Scaled Agile Framework qualification, as well as an awful lot of change management qualifications to my name. And they all sort of fit into this, to be honest. I even had somebody the other day making the links between some of the things we were learning in the course and ITIL version 4. So, I think that gives you an idea that it's about how you do stuff. And once you know how to do something, you can always link it back to the methodology and go, this is helping me achieve that.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Next question. I've seen ProSci and ADACAR processes, methods referenced with regards to change management. Does the Agile Change Agent course touch upon these?
ProSci is an organisation in the US, and they own the method, what's called the ADCAR method. And ADCAR is a little like AIDA. AIDA is one of those things that says there's 4 steps: getting your attention, your interest, your desire, and your action. And the ProSci methodology has some similarity to that. So again, it's giving you a sort of a step-by-step framework, and absolutely that fits in, because if you think about how do I get to an actual change, we are talking in that transition curve, aren't we, about making people feel aware and wanting to make change happen. So all the communication about what the change is, how it might impact their role, has to happen. Then we get into getting them to participate in creating defining new processes, defining new templates, designing new screens, storyboarding their customers' experience, all of those sorts of activities. We get them to actually do and test, and that helps them create the new ways of working. And then, of course, they're rolled out and we measure on the benefits. So absolutely, it fits that kind of model. Again, what we're saying is if you know that stuff, we'll link it back for you. But if you don't know that, you're not expected to. Or you'll walk away being able to do it, but you don't have to know any of those theories or models.
Great, thanks, Mel. The remaining questions are training and certification based. So the first one is quite an interesting one on self-study, actually. How are the activities conducted if choosing the self-study option?
Well, let's be honest, you will, if you want to sort of do things and you like doing things with people, then joining a course means that you can actually join in and learn from others. But what is in the book and is all of the questionnaires, the checklist, that kind of stuff. And it's all about how you would then take a change. If you want to get the most out of self-study, the thing you want to do is think about a change that either you've been recently involved in or you're about to do, and you actually use the textbook as a workbook and go, right, okay, do you know what? I'm going to create my roadmap. I'm actually going to start looking at all of the questionnaires and checklists that are in the book. I'm going to use those, and I'm going to use the techniques that are in the book, because there's an awful lot of techniques in the book that are about how do I discover what the benefits are, how do I ratify and size those benefits, and how do I then apply them. So the book is a workbook. It was not ever written as some giant textbook. It's got all of those questionnaires and checklists in there. So if you want to self-study, you've got the materials, but make sure you apply it as you would be asked to in a training course to a real life situation.
Great, thanks, Bill. And yeah, the final questions about the course and accreditation. So, first one, does the certification expire? I can answer that one because none of our foundation exams expire. So once you have that certification, that's yours for life, effectively. Who do we or could we speak to in order to take this course accreditation? So again, I can start on that one. So we have a couple of initial providers accredited for it, including Melanie. Mel, did you want to say something about that? Of course.
Well, that's the point. It depends where you are in the world. I know that we're bringing on new accredited training organisations all of the time. So always go to the APMG website, and you have a facility on there, don't you, where people can actually make a sales inquiry if they want to.
Yes.
So they can go to the page for Agile Change Agent, and they can say, can somebody please come back to me and tell me more about where I can sit a course in my country?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, there's an additional question about the cost of courses as well. Now, this can vary because at APMG we accredit the various providers, but they're free to set their own pricing for courses. So, Mel, I don't know if you want to say something about your particular course, for example.
Well, I mean, I think mine, because I work in central London, so I'm obviously paying for the venue in central London, but also in my case, I put all of the fees for the exam, for example, and the textbook and everything into one fee. So I charge £895 to get this qualification. And other training companies will make different decisions, and some people will give you discounts. Like I always obviously give discounts for people who are in the contractor market. So it depends on the organisation, but the key thing is find a training company that you rely on, that you think's got good content, that you think is going to give you what you need. Because if you're signing up for any training course, what you want to know is that the person delivering it really knows their stuff, that actually that the training company is going to provide you with as much materials as you could possibly want. Because if you're going to go down the training course route and not the self-study route, you want that added value. The added value, I think, also comes from being able to work with other people and learn from other people. But make sure that you ask questions. Any training course you ever buy, why don't you ask the training company for examples of what it is they're going to provide for you? So just make them work, make sure that they explain to you the level of understanding and practical application that the trainer has, and what kind of materials they're going to make available for you. But as a standard, what you will get is you've got this workbook that I've left on the screen here, and you will be taking the exam as part of the course, but also you can self-study it.
Great, thanks, Mel. And there's a comment from Jenny who says, we're welcoming you, Mel, back to VWFS in January for this course. Will it be useful for attendees to think about examples of real change they've been involved in or are involved in currently if they'll be asked to apply the learning to a real situation?
Yes, always. What I've done in the way that I train it, because sometimes people have got some changes, but they're not close enough to them, and they know that they're on the course because they know change is coming up and they want to prepare. So I've got a nice simple scenario, that a situation that people can use if they haven't got one of their own changes, but a lot of people get more value if they can make it contextual to the job that they do. But for the training materials for this course, whoever the training company is, they will have that scenario. I've written it so that everybody can have a starting point if they want, if they don't have something that they want to use in the course, and sometimes for confidentiality reasons that is often the case as well. But you get the most out of it the more you can think about a change that you are actually going to be doing.
Okay, thanks, Bill. I think that's looks like all the questions. So we've begun to wrap up there. As I mentioned at the start, we will be sending a follow-up email for the webinar. So as soon as we've got the course and recording online, do look out for that email. Should be within the next couple of hours or so, because we'll include some additional links and resources in that as well.
And I've also got more resources on LinkedIn, if you connect with me, that's all about agile and change. So it's not necessarily about the qualification itself, but actually talking about some of the techniques, and also talking about why this is such a hot topic at the moment. So there's lots of materials out there if you want to really dive into this and get up to speed.
Brilliant, thanks, Mel. And I was just going to ask you for that side. So if you're eager to find out more information in the meantime, that's a preview of the page for the course and exam on our website. Rest assured we'll include the details in the follow-up email. So don't worry about scribbling down the link. Okay, I think that's everything. So just leaves me to thank everyone very much for attending. Hopefully we've whetted your appetite for the course, and big thanks, of course, to you, Mel, for joining us and taking us through the details. So thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.